We need to keep moving America towards the middle in discussion of what shared values we're going to have, no matter what happens. There's a lot of work in front of us the next 4 or 5 years, right? There's a lot of work to resuscitate and make this country unified again in certain ways. And there's concrete steps we can.
And that has to be done regardless of the outcome of the presidential election.
No matter what, we don't have a luxury to just wait 4 years. We have to be incredibly vigilant about what's happening right now. There's bad players massing. There's people on the world stage who are seeking to outperform and disrupt, and some destroy us. And we don't have time to be having an endless food fight in the cafeteria on virtually every platform of engagement. And people, I think, will be immensely rewarded who step forward. But the problem is a lot have not been. Right? There's a lot of penguins have been jostled off the cliff. But I think that if somebody strikes out with bold leadership and continues that consistently, and everyone's got different opinions about who's doing that more or less in the political space.
Well, do you see positive signs of that? Let's see if we can be optimistic in a bipartisan way for a moment. Do you see signs of that on the Republican and the Democrat sides at the moment? I mean, with the Republicans, for me, at least, what I see gathering around Trump is a team of people that pull the emphasis in many ways away from Trump himself. Trump has ex-Democrats surrounding him. You could argue that he's an ex-Democrat himself for that matter. And so I can see a consensus that consists of a multitude of different ideas, many of which are arguably more core to the American, the Central American enterprise than before. I can see that developing around him. And then on the Democrat side, we've talked about this a little bit. Well, do you want to discuss what you see happening, for example, at the DNC and with Harris's attempts to make hypothetical attempts, at least, which is at least something to move things more to the center?
Well, I think that very clearly the DNC was an expression of a movement back to the center.
Okay, why do you think that was clear? What was clear about that?
There's a counter argument that people make where they say this is all cover for a secret Trojan horse Marxist operation to take over America. And to me, it's like projection for me is when someone's a monolith, but two things at once simultaneously. So she can't be, a vapid, empty vessel with no brain who also is the mastermind of smuggling in another agenda. And so part of what happened, this is just a differentiation issue. Do we want to decide that she's purely, evil in a monolithic way and that nothing can be learned? Well, then you don't have anywhere to go. But she clearly moved towards the middle on a number of issues. People were chanting. She had the parents of hostages on stage. Her husband, Doug Emhoff's children, and her stepchildren were on stage during that. That was a big moment. Who she chose to have speak was a big moment.
Why who she chose to have speak?
Every speaking engagement at the DNC is a carefully orchestrated set of real politic calculations. And so is it different than if she hosted, Islamicist protesters on stage? Of course it's different. Of course that's a different image, and it's naive to think that it's not the result of protracted negotiations and power dynamics that happen behind the scene. And so even if she's staging it, and a lot of people, rightly, I think for anything that happens in the political sphere, are cynical that represents sort of a true more center. In my estimation, I think that her behavior and movement around 2020 was an aberration from where she is. She's a prosecutor from Oakland. She moved sort of too far in a sense of views, but I think this is more of a return to where she naturally is. And I think people also have to be able to learn and make adjustments.
Well, the overarching issue is, regardless of all that, in some sense, the battle to move the political system toward the center has to proceed regardless.
That's right. And
or we know what the consequences are.
Look, veterans were on stage. Alyssa Slotkin got up and spoke about USA. Who she chose and who she had there and what was said represented a very moderate, ready view of America on stage. Now, that's not to suggest that there's not problems. It's not to suggest that I don't understand cynicism. It's not to suggest that everything is solved. But what we're talking about is where we are seeing movement.
Well,